Hello guys, welcome to another React with 10 conspiracy theories about the Titanic. Sorry, I couldn't read the fucking title because YouTube decided that I needed Wikipedia to see the information because we can't trust whoever this guy is telling me the information, apparently. Thanks, YouTube. I'm glad we have gotten to the point in history where Wikipedia is the go-to for information. Anyway, let's react to this video. It was suggested by Travis in the Discord. So, let's go.
Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching TopTenz Net, and in the video today, the top 10 conspiracy theories about the Titanic. In April of 1912, the RMS Titanic set sail on its way to New York City, and it was one of the biggest ocean liners of its time. Yes. It is an iceberg, and unfortunately,
very
there
small
were only 20
by now.
Lifeboats on its maiden voyage,
Standards.
which was not enough to save everyone on board. More than 1,500 people died, and the survivors witnessed the boat sink. More than 100 years later, people are still fascinated by the tragedy, and it inspired what is now considered to be one of the most tragic romance movies of all time. Just like any major tragedy around the world, people began to speculate that there may be more.
I hated that fucking movie. I watched it once. I pretty much forgot everything leading up to the part where they're on like the board and they're waiting. And there's so much room on this wooden fucking board, dude. And then this dumb bitch, is taking up almost the entire board by herself by not taking it up. She's just there. And then the guy that could easily get onto it and be on it is just not getting on it. What the heck?
To the story. Some secret reasons why the ship sank, as if a massive iceberg was not enough. Well, in the video today, we're looking at 10 conspiracy theories surrounding the Titanic.
Guess we need more reasons, right?
Number 10. Closed watertight doors. When the White Star Line created the Titanic and its sister ships, the Britannic and Olympic, they were all designed by shipbuilders Harland and Wolff from Belfast. In their designs, the ships were created so that 16 watertight compartments could flood with ocean water and still remain afloat. According to some theorists, they believe that these watertight doors did more harm than good. Some people believe that if it wasn't for the doors, the ship may have filled up with water evenly underneath the entire ship instead of just one side. The idea is that this may have bought the passengers enough extra time to escape. Keep in mind that these doors are the reason why the front of the boat dipped into the water after it hit the iceberg. These same passengers claim that if the water was more evenly distributed, it would have bought the passengers an additional 30 minutes of time to escape. However, the Discovery Channel tested this theory with a simulation in a documentary in 1998 called Titanic: Secrets Revealed. They concluded that if it wasn't for the watertight doors, the ship would have sunk much sooner. Historian Park Stevenson explains that in a wooden boat, evenly distributing the water would make sense, but since the Titanic was a steel ship, the watertight doors did, in fact, keep it afloat for at least 30 minutes longer than it would have otherwise. Number 9.
Okay, so basically two sides debating water say if you did it my way you get 30 extra minutes. Okay, that's what we're okay, great. How about we just make a new ship, 2 new ships, and we just test it like that? Fuck simulations, let's do it for real. Let's go just sink 2 ships for a test. I mean, the American military did it. We tried to just sink one of our own aircraft carriers after World War II to see like how it would happen. That's a fun story.
9. Fire in a coal bunker. Some theorists believe that
they couldn't do it. They had to just land on it and put explosives on the weak points. No missiles or torpedoes or anything would sink it, no matter how hard they try. And that was before today's super carriers too, which are even harder to sink. Which is crazy to me that you get like individuals saying, a single Swedish submarine with 1 torpedo can sink the whole thing. As if the American government didn't try this on a weaker carrier already.
a fire was burning near the hull of the Titanic for as long as 3 weeks before its maiden voyage. A documentary on Channel 4 in the United Kingdom called Titanic: The New Evidence digs into the theory that the boat sank because of fire rather than ice. The fire would have weakened the steel of the ship and made it easy for an iceberg to tear through the side. This theory comes from photographs of the ship before it set sail, where black marks can be seen. Some people theorize that this is a burn mark of a fire that would have been invisible to the passengers. This theory originated from an article in the New York Tribune which claimed that the fire began while the boat was docked in Southampton, England. However, just after the boat sank, people were going wild with their own conspiracy theories. While the documentary uses evidence that has been around for years, there really hasn't been any new discovery that supports this theory. It's entirely possible, but most would agree that regardless of whether the fire was going on or not, the iceberg would have still done its damage. Number 8. Expansion joints.
That doesn't matter. Did the fire sink it? Yes or no? No, it didn't. Did ramming into ice sink it? Yes or no? Yes. If fire weakened the hull, it's still not what sunk it. Ramming into an iceberg is what sunk it. It's like with the corona shit where, oh, you have corona? Okay. Oh, you're also having a heart attack because of your diet that was going to happen no matter what? I guess this is a death due to corona. Yep, no, not the heart attack. That's what that number 9 sounds like. And it's so fucking stupid.
Theory. This is yet another theory that tries to put the blame on the designers of the Titanic. There were expansion joints at the bottom of the ship which some theorists believe would have broken the Titanic during any rough storms. Indeed, they believe that it wouldn't have taken something as massive as an iceberg to take it down. A researcher for the History Channel named Rushmore Denua believes that the bottom of the ship did not flood at all and that the snapping expansion joints are what caused the boat to break apart. The only evidence that Denua has about this idea is that one of the White Star liners that was built later, the HMHS Britannic, had more expansion joints installed as a safety precaution. However, considering just how many boats belonging to the White Star Line were destroyed, it would have been even more shocking if they didn't make any improvements to the designs.
Okay. So, I don't know a lot about the Titanic, right? How much evidence do we have that the bottom flooded? Is it an equivalent amount? Is it a lot? If that's the consensus, then I would assume we have a lot, right?
To top it all off, the Britannic sank as well in 1914. Number 7. Underwater UFO. If you thought you were going to get through a conspiracy list without hearing about aliens, think again. According to a tabloid called Weekly World News, they have so-called evidence that a UFO shot lasers at the Titanic. A scientist named Dr. Joseph Hoff.
Wouldn't that be a USO? It's not a flying object.
Stettler claims that they discovered 3 large holes underneath the ship, which they conclude could only have come from an attack by an underwater alien spacecraft. They also claim that nearby ships lost radio contact with the Titanic, which is why more rescue boats were not able to show up and rescue the survivors. Of course, there is very little evidence to back up this theory, but as with most alien theories, it all comes down to what you believe exists and what you don't. Number 6.
Here's what I believe. I believe that if conspiracy theories or stories of any kind are geographically prevalent, and if you don't teach someone about it, especially that doesn't live in that geographical region, and yet they never encounter anything that would make them come to that own conclusion themselves, the chances of it are really zero. It's clearly a cultural thing at that point.
Time travelers sank the Titanic.
Oh,
Yet another
of course.
supernatural theory claims that time travelers sank the Titanic. During an interview with a podcast called Star Talk, Neil deGrasse Tyson said,
"It's been rumored that the
Calm down your
reason why
leg.
the Titanic sank is because in the future they invented a time machine and everyone wanted to go back to the Titanic to see the iceberg when it hits, and then it overloaded the Titanic and it sank."
Of course,
Are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? Do I even want to argue with this? Like, it sounds like a waste of time. It's so, you know what? It's content, whatever. Why wouldn't the future go back in time to those guys and make them stop? Right? That's just such a stupid reason.
he was totally joking, but there are people out there
Oh,
who
thank
truly
God.
do believe in this theory. A website called Stranger Dimensions took this theory a bit further with their own spin on the idea, saying that the time travelers weren't tourists, but spies paid by JP Morgan to sabotage the ship in order to collide with the iceberg in order to claim the insurance money.
JP
Number 5,
Morgan? What the
Federal
fuck?
Reserve Scheme. Financier JP Morgan was the owner of White Star Line, and he had invested a significant amount of money into the Titanic. Before setting sail, he was working on a plan to create the American Federal Reserve to regulate the banking system. There were some outspoken critics of Morgan's ideas, and all of them had originally booked a trip on the ship. Their names were Benjamin Guggenheim, Isa Strauss, and David Astor. Morgan and some of his closest friends cancelled their trip on the Titanic at the last minute and survived. His opponents were all on board the Titanic and perished during the sinking of the ship. The Federal Reserve was created the very next year in 1913.
Are you telling me the only reason the Fed exists is because of the Titanic? Maybe we should review the idea of the Fed then. If it has such a stupid reason to exist.
Now, all of that is true, but is it a coincidence or is it something much darker? There is indeed so much more to this theory that it could be its own video in itself. It involves the Rothschild family and even the Illuminati. However, if we sum everything up,
they are on the dollar.
Evil bankers wanted control over the US economy so badly that they were willing to stage a wreck, killing more than 1,000 people in order to take out a handful of men. If that is true, many members of the crew, including the captain, would have had to be involved. They would have to have been okay with the plan and willing to give their lives towards the cause. Number 4. Attacked by a German U-boat. In 1915, just 3 years after the sinking of the Titanic,
I think
the
I've heard
RMS
this one actually.
Lusitania was attacked by a German submarine and it sank. Considering that both boats were made by the same company, they were comparable sizes and built with similar materials, conspiracy theorists have argued that the Titanic may have been hit by a German submarine as well. A conspiracy theorist named Dr. Franklin Rule talked about this idea on a TV series called Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion, and he later talked about it for the Huffington Post. Apparently, survivors heard sounds of explosions on the ship. There were also lights from a ship seen in the distance, which survivors attributed to a ship called the Californian. However, as Dr. Rule claims, the Californian saw lights in the distance as well. This has led to the theory that a third ship, in this case a German U-boat, would have been there and slipped underneath the water, never to be seen again. However, World War I did not begin until 1914. The Titanic sank in 1912, so there would be no reason for Germany to attack the ship at that time. In his article, the only source is Dr.
It's also as the whole concept of this. Oh, they were made by the same company. They're made with the same materials, and this one sunk to a U-boat, so the other one must have too. That's like, oh, well, humans are made by the same company? They're made of the same materials. This one died because he fell on a pencil which impaled his eye and stabbed into his brain, killing him. Therefore, that's how the other ones must have died too. Just all of them.
Rule links to for this theory
it's ridiculous.
Are his own videos, as well as psychic premonitions that people had before the crash. Number 3. The Curse of the Pharaoh. In 1889, the British Museum acquired an Egyptian artifact known as the Unlucky Mummy. This is due to the fact that its previous owners had some serious bad luck. While this is all true, the conspiracy begins when some believe that the new owner of the mummy was trying to board the Titanic in 1912. Conspiracy theorists believe that the same curse that brought misfortune to all of the other owners of this mummy is to blame for the Titanic sinking. Of course, this theory has several holes in it. For one, you would have to believe in the mummy's curse. Secondly, there is no evidence that shows that the mummy was actually on board the ship. And if it truly was on the ship, the likelihood that someone would have prioritized an artifact to take up space on a lifeboat in place of other human beings is also pretty ridiculous. And how do we know it would have to be on a lifeboat? Well, that's because the mummy is today on display at the British Museum. Number 2. The No Pope Curse.
Why would it be going on a cruise?
From 1987 claims that on the hull of the Titanic there were the numbers 390904. When seen in a mirror, the numbers appear to be the word No Pope. The construction of White Star Line ships was completed in Belfast. As the story goes, many of the shipyard workers were Catholic, and they saw this as a bad omen. That God would not be protecting this ship, and it was truly doomed to sink. Snopes investigated this story and discovered that the number on the Titanic's hull was actually 131428. Not only is the number wrong though, but the vast majority of shipyard workers were actually Protestant, not Catholic. And even if the story had been true, one would still have to believe in the supernatural for this conspiracy theory to hold any weight.
Not to mention, these are just fucking numbers. They are not English. You can write numbers in English. Those numbers were not English. Those were numbers. So...
Number 1. The Olympic insurance claim. The oldest and most well-known and widespread conspiracy theory about the Titanic is that the White Star Line switched out the Titanic for its sister ship, the Olympic. The RMS Olympic was the first of the massive ocean liners, but unfortunately it collided with another ship and became very damaged. Edward Smith, the captain of the Olympic, was to blame for the accident, and White Star Line did not get any money from their insurance company to pay for the repairs. Smith became the captain of the Titanic as well, and he went down with the ship.
Why would you do that? He crashed the first one and screwed you out of insurance money. Then you give him the other one? What?
Some theorists believe that the Olympic was quickly repaired with parts from the Titanic and set sail in the Titanic's place. Considering that the two ships look almost identical, people believe this must have been an easy switch. When it sank as well, the White Star Line was able to get millions from the insurance claim. However, in a documentary done by Sky, it was revealed that the dives from the wreckage of the Titanic found steel parts stamped with the number 401, which were all original Titanic parts. If it were actually the Olympic, as this theory claims, there would be at least some remnants of parts labeled with its serial number, which was 400, but there are none. This proves that the ship that sank was, in fact, the Titanic. Not only that, but there were roughly 15,000 Irish men working on these ships, and the sheer number of people means that the likelihood that all of them could have kept quiet about this secret is slim to none, especially after having a few pints in the pub. So I really hope you found that video interesting, and don't forget we put out brand new videos just like this every day of the week. So
it got me ranting a little bit, and what I'm learning is me ranting seems to be the thing that is enjoyed about these videos more than actual reactions or whatever. Just because at time of recording, every little thing that comes back to me as feedback so far has been about the ranting. I don't know. So hopefully you enjoyed that. That was suggested once again by Travis in the Discord. If you want to suggest some links, feel free to leave those in the Discords in the description below. If you can avoid links, you can just comment in the channel, the comments there, because YouTube will eat the links. But that's going to be it for today. So thanks for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.